Hello everybody and ooh, temperature overlay. That's exciting. Let's not have that. Okay, I didn't realize that was bound to that key, but sure. Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where today I'm trying to be slightly more competent than I was yesterday, and on that note, we definitely do have a decoupler, so that's great. Let's just go ahead and move towards our ascending node here. I'm sure it'll be, let's set this as our target. It's actually going to be the descending node. That's okay. And we will warp ahead to somewhere like here. We had a bit of a false start yesterday, of course, on our particular Eve mission that we're working on here. Unfortunate, but such things do happen. Let's go ahead and get our inclination change. This is a descending node. Let's get our inclination change done here, and that will work absolutely fine. We'll get lined up for that. We'll try to physics warp this. We'll see what the Kraken has to say about that. It's a little bit spicy, to be sure. But okay. There we go. We made it. And let's go ahead and warp over towards this. Wonderful. So we should have absolutely no problem getting to Gilly. And this is, of course, but stage 1. I just want to double check that I forbade... Hello, where are you? Decoupler, can I look at you, please? Okay, we'll do this after the burn, I guess. I wanted to double check that I forbade this from fuel flow, but I think I did. We'll find out in a moment. Can't really open it up well in Time Warp, it seems. So that's fine. We will just let that Time Warp finish up, and let's take a look. Disable crossfeed. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. So we will burn this at T minus 23 seconds, and that will be just fine. 23 is, of course, in just a moment here, and we'll burn this right about now. And off we go. A little bit of explodinating happening there, but that's fine. We have no problem with that. None whatsoever. So it's not like we have a shortage of Delta V here. We have way more than enough. And to address a comment that I saw about the previous iteration of this being used as a comm satellite, I thought about that. I really did. But this is a communitron. This isn't a relay connector, so it's not actually going to be that useful as a communication satellite. Unfortunate, but that is the reality. So let's just go ahead and hold this attitude for a little while longer here. Is that good enough? That's good enough. And we'll just hold about here for now. What would it be like if at the descending node we attempted to intercept? Probably awful. Actually, that's not that bad. That's only 85 days to an intercept. And what are we actually looking at here? We are looking at a retrograde. I mean, we can probably change that. Come in, say, ooh, hello. Come in this direction. Let's see here. Gilly is going this way. We'd be going this way. That would be okay. We don't need to come in this tight, of course. Have it be like this. This is not retrograde. And this would be encapsulating Gilly's orbit. I think this is fine. As is. I like it. So let's just turn on over, and yeah, we're having so much better of a time turning with this reaction wheel now that we have that giant first stage gone. So that is wonderful. We are about 754 meters per second out here from what we need. So let's just go ahead and warp towards this. This is going to be a grand total of 53 seconds from the T-minus that we need to burn this at. Look at that. I can do math today. I'm recording at a sane hour. Wonderful. I also didn't spend altogether too long working on video editing. So that is good. So we are going to warp towards the 53 second marker, and that is completely fine. Bring it a slight overshoot there. It should be okay. And we'll just keep an eye on this. But yeah, it should be completely fine. So let's just take a look at our final orbit. As long as it's approximating this, we're okay with it. That periapsis is going to be in like 176 days. That's fine. We don't have any of our contracts that are going to run out super soon. And we're actively working on our contracts, so that is all very, very good to know. I would be a little bit upset if we weren't working on some of these contracts, if I'm honest. So we're going to have to do another inclination change for Gilly, and then we're going to have to try to do an intercept. It's going to be interesting, to be sure. We're about 450 meters per second away from being done with this burn, about another 55 seconds left in it. I'm thinking about attempting a physics warp here. Any Krakens? We've got a little bit of a shimmy going on here. Let's bring it on down, though. We got a lot of time save out of that warp, so I'm very happy about that. And we will cut our engines in just a moment. We, of course, need to keep an eye on this. Good enough. Okay. So at this periapsis, we want to do a circularization burn, and being completely circular is okay by me. We can bring it on down to this. In fact, we don't even need to bring it this far, but I'm going to do it because we're going to need to kill this velocity at some point anyway, so we might as well circularize this so that we can... I mean, this really wouldn't be circularizing it, though. What we'd really want to do is try to encapsulate this orbit a little bit better. This isn't perfect, but it's good enough. We'll go ahead and do that. So let's just move on over towards that maneuver node. And we will begin our long warp here. So this is going to be 176 days as we approach Gilly. And that'll be completely fine. I do want to check to make sure that we didn't burn fuel out of our onboard baguette. And indeed, we did not. So that is perfect. We're going to warp on forward here. And Gilly is just soaring around Eve at this point. Very nice. So, of course, we're going to have a pretty big inclination change to make. That's no big deal. I would like to set Gilly as our target, and that does give us our ascending and descending node here, so we can see we're about 11.5 degrees off, and that's okay. We're not short on delta V to make this happen. So that should be completely fine. We have about 30 more days left in this warp, and you can see here we are coming on in to the Eve system. And here we are. We need to go to about T-minus 27 seconds? Yes, 27 seconds. Okay, and that is indeed what we'll do. And we will burn our retrograde burn right about now. Excellent. It doesn't really matter as long as we get in proper orbit of Eve here what this burn ends up looking like, but we'll aim for something kind of similar to this anyway. And we'll look for our real actual burn in a little bit. Is Gilly tidally locked to Eve? I feel like it is. Or at least it should be. But we'll think about where we want to land on Gilly once we get properly in orbit of it, which is, of course, always entertaining with the minuscule amounts of delta V that is required to work in Gilly orbit. We're just going to continue burning this on down. Like I said, we'll have to burn this speed off eventually anyway. So we'll just approximate this. Good enough. Okay. Next up is going to be the descending node. So we will grab right here in 13 days, and we will change our inclination. 0.7 degrees, and there we go. That is what we need. So we'll head on over to that maneuver node, and we'll just match planes with Gilly here. And we will go ahead and warp towards that. That is, of course, only 13 days in the future. Not too much in terms of a warp, but we don't get our maximum warp. I deleted the node. I meant to stop the warp. Oh boy. Well, I said I'd be more competent, not that I'd be competent. Okay, so we'll do that again, and I'm actually just going to warp here and see if that allows us to warp faster. It does not, so I will cancel the auto warp and we'll just warp to here. T-minus 6 seconds is when we want to commit to this burn. And that is okay. We will be in position for that momentarily. And there's Eve. Can we see Gilly from here? It should be towards Eve from us. It's kind of on the other side of Eve right now. Yeah, I don't think it's particularly visible at this distance. T-minus 6 seconds is what we are aiming for this burn. So let's go ahead and burn this here in just a moment. Right about now. Inclination changing. Let's be on the maneuver node, thank you very much. And let's just get that done about... Is that good enough? That's good enough. Okay, at the periapsis, what would it look like if we attempted to intercept? It'd probably be pretty good, actually. Surprisingly good. To the point where we have an encounter right here. What does that encounter look like? Now, Gilly's gravity well is minuscule. 73 kilometers? Okay, let's go ahead and bring that in ever so gently. I'd also like to change our inclination on it a bit, make this a bit more equatorial, if at all we can. What would that end up... Is this showing us our inclination over Gilly? No, it's not. Okay, so we'll just have to feel that one out. That's fine. This is only 30.8 meters per second here. So let's get into position for that. T-minus 1.5 seconds is when we want to do this. We will go ahead and warp towards that. Excellent. We have so much Delta V in this tank. This is wildly overkill. I knew that would be the case, to be fair. And we are just going to keep on warping here towards 1.5 seconds. And we will burn this gently from here. Okay. Bringing it on in. How's that? That is inside of Gilly. Let's flip it on around to prograde. We want to land on Gilly, but not quite yet. Not quite this rapidly, anyway. So let's bring this on back. We're going to have to be very gentle here. Oof. Okay, we're going to flip it back again. And I'm going to thrust limit this down to like 1%. Okay, and then we're going to bring it in. Very, very gently. This is more manageable. Around 10 kilometers is probably fine. So once we reach this location, we are, of course, going to do a bit of a braking burn and get ourselves into a proper orbit. Ideally circular-ish, anyway. Circular-ish is fine. Yeah, that'll do. That should be completely clear. Excellent. So let's go ahead and align for that. This is going to require a little bit more thrust than what we currently have access to. That would be 1 minute. That would be 11 seconds. Okay, let's have this at like 75% thrust, maybe like 50. Yeah, that'll do. T-minus 11 seconds is when we want to warp to at this point. We will be arriving at Gilly very shortly. Where is Eve? There is Eve, and there is Gilly. Fantastic. Just a tiny little speck there. And just barely make it out moving against the background. I like it. Got about another 4 days to warp here. Gilly is getting closer and closer all the time. Nice. Okay, so we'll warp to T-minus 11 seconds. And we will burn this right about now. Excellent. Now, in terms of landing this thing, I have a sneaking suspicion we're not going to need much of this fuel at all. We've still got 3,000 Delta V in this, remember. So that's kind of hilarious. Okay, how's this looking? We're definitely going to want to continue to bring this in, but gently. Any movements over Gilly are huge. Gilly has barely any gravity well. Driving around on the surface of Gilly is going to be real interesting. For the record. Okay. So I think it kind of doesn't matter where we land on Gilly. And I do want to change our inclination. So once we pass the equator, which is somewhere around the periapsis, I feel like that's approximately the equator, we're going to want to burn, let's see, I believe this is going to be anti-normal that we want to burn. Let's test this. Let's see here. Nope, normal. Okay, so we'll flip that on around. And we will, of course, also warp to the periapsis, approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll just go here, and we'll attempt to burn down our inclination a little bit. That is moving more quickly than I was hoping. Okay. At this point, we are losing efficiency, so I'm going to warp ahead a little bit. Advanced orbital info is locked? Why is advanced orbital info currently locked? Oh, because we were in time warp? Maybe. Okay, so that's currently continuing to go up. We're going to warp around over to here. I'm just feeling it out at this point. We did manage to change our inclination pretty dramatically, but not as dramatically as I would have liked. That's continuing to go up. Okay. So we'll try it around over here. Let's see how this goes. Probably still going to go up until we go over here is my bet. But let's find out. Yep, okay. As I expected, we'll move around over this way. 18 meters per second is orbital velocity, by the way. If we can find a location here, we didn't bring a survey scanner. We maybe should have on this, but that's something we can add for the Eve mission. We didn't bring a survey scanner, and I do wish that we had. But hopefully we land somewhere somewhat reasonable. Let's bring that inclination on down. Looks like we're losing efficiency at this point. Okay, let's warp ahead a little bit. I am expecting that we are still going to be losing a little efficiency over this way, but we may be able to continue to bring that inclination on down. Yeah, a little bit here. Losing efficiency again, so we will warp ahead to here. We're down to 1.7 degrees. I mean, this is good enough, but I kind of want to take one more orbit and land over on this side. Gilly is not tidally locked, I think. It's spinning pretty quickly. Okay, that's good to know. 1.6, 1.5, and back up to 1.6. So we'll warp ahead over this way. We're going to keep trying over through here, but once we get to the apoapsis, we're going to drop. So let's warp ahead a little bit here. I'm actually going to cancel this warp. And we'll continue to burn this. And we lost efficiency there. We were under 1 degree. So that's great. And we're just going to move it on over to around here or so. Okay, continuing to advance. We'll call this good. So at the apoapsis, we are just going to go to surface retrograde. Honestly, are we going to ditch this? We could leave it in orbit. It doesn't have any way to harvest the fuel. So I think we'll not. We'll leave it on the surface, and maybe we could... Well, we could actually... Huh. We could repurpose this. Put a docking port on it, put a remote guidance unit on it, which I think we can manipulate in space. Take these guys off, put them elsewhere, and we should be able to turn this into a fuel tug. That could be a cool project. So I'm going to go ahead and decouple this now. Like so. And that should remain in orbit here. I am going to fire our twitches, which are hideously powerful for this. I'm going to thrust limit our twitches down to 1%, but I did want to have 4 of them for the purposes of stabilization. So we'll do something like this. 1% thrust. Okay. At 1% thrust, we are maybe a little underpowered. Our thrust weight is actually 2.95, so it seems okay. This is going to take a while to get to the surface, if I'm honest. We are now officially going to land. And that's great. We're not moving very quickly, but we don't expect that over Gilly, in all honesty. We've passed our apoapsis. That's great. And you can see here our horizontal speed is continuing to drop. We're just going to hold this position until our horizontal speed is at 0. Our vertical speed we currently do not care about. Or very close to 0, anyway, for the horizontal speed. Currently at about 4 meters per second. Now 3. Now at 2 meters per second. 1 meter per second. And we'll just lead the rest of this down very, very gently. Good enough. Okay, so at this point, let's pop this over into a vertical orientation and allow ourselves to accelerate. I'm going to quick save here, because I'm always paranoid about this, but we're going to time warp our way down. At least as much as we can. We'll hop back into surface retrograde, and I am actually interested in upping the thrust limit on these. Actually, we should stop this time warp for the time being. I'm interested in upping the thrust limiter on these to about 2. Something along the lines of this. Excellent. And let's see if we can't bleed off a little bit more of that horizontal speed. No, please stop trying to go back to surface retrograde for right now. Yeah, you can just hold here. That'll be fine. Okay, so we're just going to bleed off a little bit more of that horizontal speed, which we had accumulated about 2 meters per second of horizontal speed, which I did not want. So we'll bring that down to approximately 0 again. There, good enough. Surface retrograde. So we're pretty much in pure vertical speed here. We can see that our suicide burn is going to be about 1 minute and 12 seconds, 18 meter per second burn. Sounds good to me. We can't time warp at this point, but what we can do is physics warp. And so we shall. So I'm going to start this when our surface speed is at about 17.5 meters per second or so. Just because I want to make absolutely sure. It'll take a little longer to get to the surface, but that is fine. So that is our eventual landing site there, and I think that should be okay. We may need to turn down the power on our rover wheels. That's going to be real interesting, to be sure. We need to accelerate about another 3 meters per second here before we suicide burn. Make that 2.5. Now about 2. And 1.5. About 1 more meter per second. I'm going to come out of the physics warp now. And we are going to burn this. Technically, it looks like we should have already been burning this. We can always throttle these up further if we need to, but I think this will be fine. We're only at 14 meters per second right now. 250 meters up, moving at about 12 meters per second at this exact moment. We're actually coming in a little faster than I anticipated. For sure. At about 9 meters per second. 8. 7. Okay. Oof. We lost a Gigantor there. With that bounce. That was unexpected, to be sure. But a small power shortage is not going to be the end of this. Okay. Let's go ahead and reorient this. And continue pushing this a little bit like so. Okay. Like I said, a small power shortage is not going to be the end of this. We have a lot of power flow from this Gigantor alone, and I'm not concerned. It's going to be pretty close, but I should have upped these to around 2.5 on the thrust limiter. 2.5%, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and orient for this. Wonderful. Okay, are we going to accelerate downhill? That is the question. Our brakes are on. We didn't pop any of our tires. That's very, very good. And I want this SAS to be SAS only. In fact, I wouldn't mind turning the SAS fully off at this exact moment, considering what we've got going on here. Once our other wheels hit the ground, we may be able to brake. That's a negative. Okay, so do we have steering enabled on our front wheels? We do not. Let's enable them and very gently turn this. I wouldn't mind getting to the bottom of this hill, though. So that was mostly successful, right? And I think ultimately this Gigantor will give us almost enough sun. It'll just be a very, very small issue. We can always repair it when we come out here, too, if we wanted to. Alternatively, we could just get our power when needed through the docking port. It's not a big deal. It's not like we burned much fuel to get here. But yeah, I definitely want to allow us to accelerate a little bit downhill here and get to a bit of a flatter area over this way. Like down at the bottom of this hill looks reasonably flat, and that should be okay. Were our brakes actually doing anything at all? I'm not convinced that they were, in all honesty. Can we not do that? Thank you. Thank you. No, can we not do that, please? Yeah, this is what I was meaning when I was saying that the... Okay. This is what I was meaning when I was saying that the gravity was going to make things interesting. So let's bring this on back and something like this. Oh, this needs to be, this is currently on SAS only. This needs to be on pilot only to get us to this position. Okay. And we'll just let the gravity take on over from here. Can't help but notice that these are spinning with the brakes action group on. I find that interesting, to be sure. Okay, we'll turn the SAS off. It is too powerful for this gravity, of course. And we will turn this back to SAS only. I'm wondering why exactly it decided to do this. This is an interesting decision to take. And that was clearly caused by the SAS. Okay, let's just hold here. And I would like to rotate this using just the internal SAS. And in fact, I'm thinking about disabling this reaction wheel in its entirety. Nope. Let's retract that solar panel real quick. Okay. And we're just going to attempt to get this back into the correct orientation. Perfect. Okay. Let's call this good. We'll set up shop here. So we'll extend our radiator. I'm going to turn this SAS off and see what this looks like settled. Good. Our brakes appear to be braking. That is wonderful. So we're going to deploy our drills, and we will get those started. Excellent. Now, we don't have much onboard storage for this, but we can go ahead and start our ISRU. And that will very, very slowly start ticking its way upward. And we'll start stocking up some ore as well. Eventually, this will fill up. There's no doubt about that. And we are having some cooling issues, but we expected that, in all honesty. This is okay. This will be expected to pulse, and world first milestone of, oh yeah, ghillie stuff. That would be true. I want to check our electric charge. It appears to be holding steady, so that is fantastic. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.